Welcome back to Final Fantasy -1. We are heading to the Desert Oasis. If you go to the town of Anrak, which is where you can access the underground shrine or the undersea shrine, they tell you that maybe there is Oxyale in the Western Oasis. Now, for those of you unfamiliar with the vanilla version of this game, for the vanilla version of this game, you have to go to a desert oasis that is in a desert that is west of Anrak. It's not shaped exactly like this, but you can see a kind of desert tile that's surrounded by some green. That's supposed to tell you that that is an important tile to enter. Your airship in the vanilla version can land on that tile, because that tile is considered to be like a green grass ground tile. I don't think that was part of the message of telling you that it was a desert oasis. I think that was a programming bug. But in this version of the game, that is not the case. So you have to land outside of the desert and walk to it through some tough Ankleo battles to get here. But anyway, we are in the desert shrine. Now, normally this isn't a dungeon. This is just a shop. When you enter that tile, you enter a shop. Where a seller sells one thing, and that is a bottle. The bottle, when you use it in the key item area, uncorks and a fairy escapes. We're going to talk about the Basilisk and Tricker battle before we get to this. Now, this battle can have, I have seen up to 3 Trickers, and you see the ninja is casting Mute. Mute is very important there for Bill the Ninja, because the Trickers can cast Bolt 3 or Lit 3 on their very first action. They can use that as their first attack. This Tricker does not. It does just a regular attack for 1 damage. That's lucky for us, because here comes the Mute spell. It misses the Basilisk, but hits on the Tricker. So now you'll see the Tricker attempt to cast Lit 3 a couple of times in this fight, and it is totally silenced, so it's okay. The Basilisk will use a stone touch attack, so the focus of my party now goes to the Basilisk. Now that the Tricker has been silenced, it cannot cast its Bolt 3, so we're going to focus our energies on that. You can see Bolt 3, the Tricker attempted to cast it, but it is silenced. So not only does silence not allow them to cast, but they will also attempt to cast it and fail, so their actions will become useless when they try to cast a magic spell. So the Ice 2 goes off, and the piddly 36 damage takes out the Tricker. But that battle can be much more dangerous than you saw. So I can't carry the Lord's Robe. So I'm going to go ahead and heal up. We're going to dump the Wizard Robe that Dan has, and we're going to equip the Lord's Robe. Wizard Robe is something you can buy in the town of Gaia. So anyway, as we're equipping this, let me finish the vanilla update. If you uncork the bottle that you can buy for 50,000 gold at the Oasis, it says a fairy appears and then disappears. And then in the town of Lefian, on the town of Gaia, that is in the northeast part of the world map of the vanilla version of the game, a fairy appears in a fairy fountain, and that fairy goes to the bottom of the fairy's lake to draw the Oxyale for you, which is supposed to be, I think, oxygen, but Oxyale. The fairy goes to the bottom of her lake to draw that for you in the town of Gaia. I want to say Lefian again. But in this one, it is a dungeon, so we need to work our way through this dungeon, picking up some treasure chests, and we need to pick up the Oxyale ourselves. So we're no longer buying a bottle for 50,000 gold. We need to traverse this dungeon here to pick up the Oxyale. So I've got some mostly not very notable treasure here. I'm going to avoid that tile in the middle of these chests, and I'm going to see if I can pick up what they have on the outside. We have plenty of battles with the Rogue and Sandhags, and as I've been talking, you may have seen some of the Rogues and Sandhags start to run away from our characters. In Final Fantasy 1, the vanilla version of this game, and I assume in this one as well, the very, very first thing that every single enemy in this game checks for is whether or not it should run away from the fight that it's in. That's the very first thing it checks for. Now, there is a slight random number check, but it's mostly based on the level of your character. So the level of your characters, the higher you are, the more likely it is that enemies will just run from you. And if they run from you, you don't get their gold or experience. So it's possible to have enemies just kind of run from you, and you don't get any rewards from those battles. Now you can see I'm exploring here. I can get out into the desert from the kind of twisty shrine. and I'm going to explore out in the desert. And sadly, we are going to bump into a exit tile. So I can see right there the water, and I should have made a beeline right for that water, but I want to see if I needed to warp around this tile. But as we are heading for that water to the north, we are warped out, and we need to try again. So we are going to go down through this dungeon one more time. I'm going to use a house to recover all of my hit points and the magic charges that I may have used. I'm just going to resave right up there because I've already gotten the Lord's Robe from the Tricker enemy, so I wanted to get an extra save right there. But so you may see things like the tool-assisted speedrun of the solo white mage goes through the vanilla version of the game by hitting fear on all of the bosses, including Chaos, using a slight programming error in the game where you can land some of the status elements on bosses, even if they resist them. If you hit on a very precise frame, I think it's a 1 in 200 chance to land that in, to pop in things like Fear, which lowers their threshold for running away. So Fear, the white magic spell in the vanilla version, lowers their threshold for running away. So if you can land that on Chaos a few times, you can actually make Chaos run away from you to end the game. But anyway, so that's the very first thing that enemies check for in this game, no matter what. Bosses, everything else, there's no special things that bosses have besides just resistance to certain elements. And the Fear spell is, I believe, the status element. So even if you resist the status element, you can land Fear once every 200 frames, and you can put that on any boss you want. But some of these sandhags and the rogues will run from us if they do not roll very high on their run check. So there is a small random chance that's involved in that. The White Shark and the Raider battles, again, these are escapable. The Raiders are kind of what Bicky was. So if you remember all the way back in the beginning of this run, there is a pirate's cave. So instead of Bicky just hanging out in the town of Provoca, he is hanging out in the pirate's cave. And there's some pirates, and then there is one raider in the middle of the pirates. So at level 2, 3, 4-ish of this game, the raiders are a pretty tough little fight. Here you can see some of these sandhags and rogues running away. But at level 20, where we all are now, they are not much of a bother for us. The Ankleo battles are pretty lucrative for experience, not so much for gold, but gold is not super important in this part of the game. They are lucrative for leveling up, but in our crawls of these dungeons, I'm usually running from them just to save you the trouble of watching long battles with some of those enemies. But the Ankleos are great for leveling up here on the northern continent of Final Fantasy -1. I was fighting some pretty good battles for leveling up right outside of the town of Onrak, which we will see in the next video as we are going to crawl the undersea shrine. So the tofu enemies are escapable. We are finally back to where we got warped out there. Now I'm going to, instead of heading for the body of water on the northern part of this map, I'm going to go for that body of water that is right in the center, as I really should have done on that very first crawl, as we will see. I'm going to head to the east here tentatively. I don't know if there's another warp tile, but I can get to the water, and inspecting that water gets me the Oxyale. So now I'm going to head back to the outside, and we are going to continue our quest. So if you have liked this video or any of the others in this series, do click the thumbs up button to like this video. Let me know that you liked it. Even more important, if you want to leave me a comment to let me know what your thoughts are on this one. I do love getting feedback from these. You can also hit me up on Twitter, where I am active_ATE, the same as this channel. And we will see you next time for the Undersea Shrine.